What's good, y'all? Welcome back to Commissioner's Corner. Today we are going to be talking about Week 1 waiver wire ads. I'm not going to get into the fab price or anything like that, but we're going to go basically through every single position, talking from least owned right now to most owned right now. There's going to be a couple guys that are way too owned to really be talking about, but I just want to talk about because they're available in way too many leagues. It's going to be a little bit longer of a video, but enough yapping. Let's get into it. We're going to start with the running backs. Probably the most boring position when we talk about picking players up in waivers this week. Running backs, I'm not targeting really any of them. The only two guys that I have an even remote interest in are going to be DJ Giddens and Dylan Sampson. So DJ Giddens, he's 11% rostered. He was the Colts backup running back. He had 12 rushes for 41 yards, which was 25% of the basically the snap share. I don't think there's really anything to his game right now. He just played in a game where the Dolphins got destroyed. Colts ran all over them. He got some workload because of this. But he's the clear running back 2 in this team, which means there is going to be value potentially because Jonathan Taylor is not a beacon of health. And this offense looked a lot better under Daniel Jones than honestly anyone probably expected coming off rip. But he doesn't really have any value. He's basically just a handcuff stash if you're interested in that type of thing and you have the roster spot for it. But I wouldn't really go out and try to grab him outside of maybe after waivers dropped and you have a roster spot. The second guy we're going to talk about is Dylan Sampson. When I was looking, he's only owned in 52% of leagues. That's crazy. There was only 2 active guys on the Browns roster when you talk about running backs. It was him and Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford fucking sucks. Sampson wasn't very good on the ground either. He had 12 rushes for 29 yards. But he got 8 targets that turned into 8 receptions, which means he has some PPR value. I think when Judkins gets in, it's going to take away from Sampson's role, and I don't think Sampson's really going to be much of a factor here other than like a all-right PPR floor. But this team does seem to want to pass a lot. They passed on 63% of downs, and Flacco was slinging it to everyone. He was pretty even across the board, even to the running back, the tight ends, receivers. So he looks to spread the ball around, and he does dump it down. But I don't think too much into it. It's just if he's not on a roster, he 100% should be. Just in case Judkins missed time, Sampson might see an expanded role at some point. We're going to get into wide receivers now a little bit. I'm much more interested in the wide receivers than the running backs. The running backs were a little bummy. Wide receivers, there's going to be a lot of value potentially in this group in this week 1. So first guy we're going to talk about is Calvin Austin. I'm not very interested in Calvin Austin. He just seems like a very solid deep league ad if a lot of these other guys are taken and then you need a guy. But he's only rostered in 7% of leagues. He had 4 receptions for 70 yards, and he had a 20% market share. That's solid. I mean, he's the wide receiver 2 for the Steelers. They love to run a lot of 2 wide receiver sets. And the offense didn't look that bad, and they don't look like a great running game. With Gainwell, with Warren, with Caleb Johnson, it didn't look great. It might get a little better, but there seems to be some value here. I'm just not that interested, but he's worth at least mentioning. So the next player we're going to get into is Quentin Johnston. I hate that I'm going to talk about this guy. It seems like every year he has these crazy weeks and does nothing the rest of the year, but he's only a third-year receiver, so we might be projecting a little bit. He's only 9% rostered. That's going to go up. He had an 82% snap share, which was the second highest on this team. I think it's going to flip with Keenan at some point. But there was a lot of value we had because Herbert was slinging the ball and he was passing it to everyone. So Quentin had 5 receptions on 7 targets for 79 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 2 red zone targets because he seems to be the preferred red zone option. They love their 3 wide receiver sets. And while I do believe Keenan, if Keenan's available and he should be obviously picked up over this guy, there seems to be some value in Johnston this season. Just because they seem to want to throw the ball more, and Herbert loves to spread the wealth. All right, so next guy we are going to get into is going to be Romeo Doubs. So Romeo Doubs, he's only 23% rostered. He didn't have a crazy game, but it's more of like a what if you stash him on your bench just to see what's going to happen. I definitely would not want to start this guy, but he's on the back end of a couple of my benches because the Packers love to throw the ball. The only issue is Jordan Love loves to spread the ball. I would not really want to start anyone here, but out of all the receivers, Doubs played the most snaps in week 1. I eventually expect that to flip a little bit with Golden because I think Golden's eventually going to have the highest snap share. But for week 1, and I think for the rest of the season, we're going to see a strong snap share for Doubs. And Doubs seems to be a part of this offense that they like to target, especially with Jaden Reed clearly being hurt. And you can see that by his snap share. I think he only ran 12 routes. And he was targeted on 3 of them, so he has a very high targets per route run. But Jaden Reed can't play full games. He's hurt. It was clear to see in week 1. We know about that Jones fracture. Something's going on, and he's trying to play through it. but he can't play very much. So Dobbs is going to see a lot of potential value. And if you need him for a week to start in your flex, I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. He just has a very low floor as well, but he played on 97% of the offensive snaps this last game. He is a very good bench holder, but am I that excited on him? No, he just has potential value in this offense, especially if somehow all those targets going to everyone start to shrink a little bit and you start to see a couple guys get a little bit more volume. This might be the most interesting guy that I want to talk about. It's going to be Hollywood Brown. He's 31% rostered. He's not available in any one of my leagues, but I am in mainly 12-man leagues, so that might have been the reason why. He is my top waiver wire pick this week, and it's not even close. So he ran a route on every single one of Holmes' pass attempts. He had 10 catches, 16 targets for 99 yards. That was an insane 42% market share, which is unsustainable because you're going to see a little more to other guys, but you can't tell me that you won't see a 30%. I see a 30% market share until you start to see those other pieces back. Xavier Worthy's going to be out a couple weeks. We're not going to see Rashee Rice for another 5. You're going to see a very solid stretch for the beginning of the season where Hollywood Brown could secure you wins. That is a very important thing because it'll allow you to be a little bit riskier trading later on. So he is by far my number one waiver wire target. He should be everyone's. And if he's available, try to snag him because he's going to give you starting wide receiver value for the next couple weeks. Last guy I'm going to get into is going to be Cedric Tillman. So Cedric Tillman is 34% rostered from the Browns. I'm not sure what this offense will be week to week. I mean, they didn't play very well this last one, but the passing volume of week 1 was sort of insane. And I like Tillman as a guy who's honestly been doing this before. He's on a 5-game stretch, which I don't think anyone really realizes because of the injury, but he's had 5 straight games, if you talk about pre-injury, where he's had at least 8 targets. It's starting to happen again this year. It basically looks like him and Judy have the same role because both of them had the same 19% market share. They had similar yards. And I don't think we're going to see Harold Fannin be the number 1 target share guy week to week. I think you're going to see more value in these 2 receivers than you will in that tight end. So you're going to see a little more value week to week. So I think he's a very good add if you miss out on Hollywood Brown. Both of them played 88% of snaps, so they're really the only 2 guys in this offense. But if they continue throwing, which I 100% expect them to still throw a huge amount, like 63%, like I said earlier, for when I was talking about Samson, is a crazy amount of pass attempts when we talk about a game. I don't think that's going to hold up, but they're going to be a above 50% pass attempt team. Eventually, we're going to see more receptions going to these 2 receivers. I think Tillman's going to be a great add right now. So to sum up the receivers a little bit here, Hollywood, by far the number 1 ad. Afterwards, we'll be talking about Tillman is probably my preferred ad, then Johnston is third. I just think you see a lot more promise with Tillman being able to do this week to week than you do see Johnston, even though Johnston has a higher upside potentially. But that is basically how I would rank these receivers going into this week when we talk about waiver wires. So tight end had a lot of interesting things going on now that we're getting there. Week 1 was the week of tight ends having an insane target share. So I'm going to put that on the board right here. It's honestly crazy how much these guys were targeted week 1 compared to a lot of these top end receivers. I don't think that's going to stay, but it does show that there is some value in this position, especially among some guys that aren't necessarily being drafted right now. So first guy we're going to talk about is going to be Juwan Johnson of New Orleans. So he's only 5% rostered. He played on 66% of the offensive snaps, which isn't crazy, but decent for a tight end. And the amount of targets he got isn't sustainable, but he saw 11 targets. That was a 26.8% market share, and he had 8 receptions for 76 yards. That's not something to be able to ignore. They're not going to throw as much as they did, but they're not going to be a team that can run the ball a lot because Kamara is not a guy you can give 20 plus touches to on a weekly basis. They're going to have to throw the ball. And is it always going to be Juwan Johnson? No, but I think he has a decent floor. I think this is going to be a ceiling. But I think he has a decent floor because they can't get every pass to Olave. They can't get every pass to Rashee Rice, Rashid Shaheed. So they're going to give some value to this tight end. I think I like the other guys a little bit more. I'm not entirely sure. I would have to think about it, which I will by the end of the video. But he's at least someone who's interesting to think about in case you miss out on these other 2 guys. Second guy we're going to talk about is going to be Harold Fannin Jr. Of the Browns. He's 6% rostered. He had 7 catches on 9 targets for 63 yards. He actually had more workload than Njoku, which no one expected going into week 1. But I'm not too surprised because he's the vertical threat. Of course I am surprised, but he is the vertical threat in this offense, and he kept finding looks. So Njoku played on 66 snaps while Fannin played on 55. They ran a lot of two tight end sets, and I think that's going to be something we're going to see a lot of this year because they don't really have a wide receiver three. Their wide receiver three is this vertical threat tight end. So I don't know how reliable it is week to week, but he's going to give you value in a lot of these games. The weird thing about this week is, like, even though they're running this heavy two tight end set, they were so pass heavy. So I think that's going to shift a little bit when Judkins finally gets going, where you start seeing a little more of the run game. You see less of everyone going out for Flacco to toss the ball to. But they're going to be a pass heavy team. I think Fannin's going to be a sneaky value, but he's going to have a very low floor because there's going to be games where Njoku pops off. There's going to be games where maybe their running game's going a little bit because they're running two tight end sets. There might be games where the receivers are going strong because it seems like even though he had a great game, he seems like maybe he'll be the third, maybe fourth option on this team on a week-to-week basis. He just is going to give you very high ceilings, potentially, because he was a great receiver in college. It's hard to tell how I'd feel necessarily about him. I think he might be the guy I'd target most just because I do like the upside. But he's a guy we definitely need to be thinking about, especially if you're missing Kittle for a couple weeks. Fannin might give you some strong value going forward. So the last tight end I'm going to talk about is going to be Brenton Strange for the Jags. He's 29% rostered. He played on 52 of 66 offensive snaps, and it was a little bit of a weird game for this one. The offensive workload was a little strange as they blew out the Panthers. I mean, everyone can blow out my Panthers. It hurts. It was a weird game where Brian Thomas Jr. only had one catch. He did have 7 targets. Hunter saw 8 targets. Strange saw 4 targets. Strange did catch all 4 of his targets for 59 yards, but I don't necessarily know how this offense is going to look. Trevor Lawrence liked his tight end last year. That is something we can say for sure. I just don't know how well that's going to carry over this year now that Hunter's there and Liam Cohen's the head coach. But he should be rostered. I mean, I think he's going to be a solid value if you're once again missing Kittle. I don't know if he's my top guy. Thinking about if I have to rank all 3 of these guys, Fannin's my number 1, Brenton Strange is my number 2, Juwan is my number 3. Strange is probably the safest value here and gives you the highest floor because I think he's going to be able to do it week to week. But I'm not entirely sure what this offense is going to look like. I think you're going to see a lot of changes in the offense as we go week to week because this team needs time to gel with a new head coach, with a new scheme, because every team that had a new head coach or a new offense coordinator struggled. Like, they struggled in week 1, and it will take them time to catch up. I think they're all going to get to that point, but they all need a second to get there. So this is going to be offense that's going to take a moment to get there, and then I think they're going to have a pretty decent floor in the passing game once they do. And lastly, we're going to get to the quarterbacks. I'm going to talk about 2 guys here. One's going to be available. The other one probably shouldn't be and probably won't be in your league. Just want to preface that. So the guy who is going to be available is Daniel Jones. He's only 10% rostered. I would not play in week 2. If you were looking for a streamer in week 2, he is not the guy. They're playing the Broncos. That is a bad idea. But he just went on a really good stretch in that game. Like, he was incredible in week 1. He had a 76% completion rate for 272 yards and a touchdown. And then he also had 2 rushing touchdowns because we forget he's a mobile guy. He was doing that for the Giants. So this offense was extremely efficient. Yes, they did not play much competition week 1. And once again, I hate saying that. David Tepper is a terrorist. But he is going to be a great pickup because this offense isn't terrible. You can already see that he has weapons around him. He used Warren. He used Pittman. He has Downs who didn't even really get much use. Like, he has weapons around him to be able to move this offense. And then he's a guy who's going to steal some rushing touchdown workload from Jonathan Taylor. So he's definitely a good option in the future. Just week 2, you need a different option than Daniel Jones. He's going to hurt you week 2 potentially. He might not. I mean, there's always that chance. But are you really going to take that risk in week 2 for Daniel Jones? No. So the other guy I'm going to talk about, he's 60% owned. Everyone's talking about him. It's Justin Fields. He shouldn't be available. He's not available once again in any of my leagues because he was always that guy that people took as a what if. But the fact that he's available in 40% of leagues is stupid. So I hate to say this. I was so out on the Jets. I called them a historically bad offense. I mean, I'm still not very high in on Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, even despite the very good first game. But I gotta say, Justin Fields has a lot of value. He was great. Wish I had another way to put it. He was the quarterback too, because he carved the Steelers up. Like, his passing workload's nothing special. I mean, his volume wasn't anything crazy. He only had 22 attempts and threw for 218 yards and a touchdown. But it's his rushing workload. Like, they're finding him ways to run the ball. He looked very comfortable in the pocket. He had 12 rush attempts for 48 yards and 2 touchdowns, which means he has a very high floor and his ceiling is sky high. And if he's available, I'm grabbing him everywhere unless I have, like, Allen. even if I have Allen, if I have a bench spot at the end, I might still grab him because that's a trade piece going forward. He should be picked up at 100% of leagues. I hate the fact that I was so out on him just because of the preseason reports of him not being able to throw the ball 3 yards. But he looked great in week 1. I think we're going to continue to see him being very good. I don't know if the other options are going to look as great as well, but I'm looking bad for my take if I'm being honest, and I think he needs to be brought in everywhere. So that's going to wrap it up. Hope y'all enjoyed. If anyone is watching this, these are my favorite targets this year. If you liked, please like the video, please subscribe, please give me comments, let me know that I'm not doing this in vain. But I do enjoy making this type of content. Like, I really enjoy doing this. I've been enjoying doing this for about 2 weeks. It's been fun, and I've been enjoying like basically being able to share what I've learned and what I've been looking at with anyone who might want to watch. And I know I'm using enjoy way too much, but whatever. But I'm gonna wrap it up there. Thank you for watching. Hope to catch you next time. Peace.